This is the Ground Game Podcast, where we cover politics from the ground up. Here are your hosts, Tom Lobianco and Patrick Pinkston.
Yo, Shining Sea, from polling place to polling place. This is the Ground Game Podcast. I'm Patrick Pinkston. Tom Lobianco is here. He is the national political reporter behind 24site.news, which is the great newsletter on national politics. I'm an old political hack that's worked Republican campaigns before I got kicked out of the party because I was against a certain orange guy. And we decided to come and talk about politics with you because we feel like it's important that instead of the top-down conversation the national media always wants to have, Tom and I both know that the real conversation that decides elections in this country are from the ground up, and that's why we're here.
I'm pumped. Dude, I'm so excited for this, man. We've been talking about this for a while, and I love seeing this come to fruition. We came up the old way, starting out in the States, and something that I have talked about over the years with my national campaign sources, and one of the ways I've always got very good reporting out of them is by speaking that language, by understanding that, look, we go to, if you talk about Virginia, for instance, Richmond is not the same thing as Nova. All right. And then if you want to get down to the, Hampton Crossroads, Norfolk, you're going to get different things. So I'm really pumped for this format. I think we're filling a crucial need in the national discussion right now.
Coming up on the show today, we'll talk to Josh Smithley, somebody you may not have heard of, but he's become kind of a Twitter phenomenon in this cycle as someone who has really dug into numbers, specifically in Pennsylvania. And Tom and I both know this race could very well be decided in Pennsylvania. So we'll talk to Josh coming up. Also, just super impressed. He's hard of hearing. So there's a little bit of a challenge in his conversation, but he does an awesome job talking with us. We hope you'll enjoy that. So, Tommy, what do you say we get into it?
Let's do it, baby.
First down.
All right, first topic. Let's talk about Kamala on Fox. Sat down with Bret Baier on Wednesday in a very combative, feisty, filibustery, almost Trump campaign planted sort of questions from Bret Baier, who I think this interview, Tom, probably falls somewhere in between the right who said it's the end of her campaign as we know it and she's toast, and the left saying, oh, she's so brave and so wonderful and she did such a great job in the lion's den. What'd you think of it?
I thought she did pretty good, all things considered. And frankly, I think, it would probably behoove her to do more like this, maybe not, in such a partisan outlet as Fox News, but look, she showed more range. I thought the filibustering was a little bit ridiculous, but also the ability to complete a sentence, speak coherent thoughts in a tough environment, I thought worked well for her.
I have a hard time blaming her for the filibustering, though. I mean, one, she knows that she's just going to keep getting pounded. So why not say what you want to say? Essentially, as someone who's done campaign PR, I told my candidates, pivot and say what you want. Pivot and talk about what you want to talk about. And that's what she did, because it was very evident from the first minute of that interview that Baier wanted to get her.
Yeah. You know what? I was reading, and I love reading, and I'm sure you read them too. Tegan Goddard, Political Wire, has been doing this for forever. And he had a very good read on this about the strategy of trying to get through to the suburban women with this. And you saw afterwards, FNC put out the press release afterwards, 7.1 million viewers, which is pretty good they said it was the biggest number of this cycle. So as this cycle goes, that was a really good showing.
And the thing with Fox's demographics, what people always think, well, it's only the Republicans and the old cranks and the Trump supporters that watch it. If you really dig into Fox's numbers, there are as many Democrats watching Fox News as there are MSNBC and CNN, and maybe sometimes even combined. So there was a serious window for her to reinforce Democrats and to reach out to those Nikki Haley disaffected conservatives, the people like me, right? The people who voted for Haley in the primary, but aren't sold on Harris at this point. I just don't know that she gave them anything in that instance that said, that's my girl.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, man, this is a central problem in the closing moments of this race. I mean, look, we're only two and a half weeks out at this point, give or take. Is that it's you have to be more than just not Trump, and she has shown plenty of that, and there's been a lot of energy. But as we've talked about before on your radio show, on the podcast, there has to be an affirmation. There has to be an affirmative case being made.
And we're not getting that, right? I mean,
No,
it's
not yet.
I've been complaining about this since the first debate.
Yeah.
That even in that night, she didn't have an answer on immigration. She didn't have an answer on the economy.
Yep.
She didn't have an answer on the Afghanistan withdrawal. She's now making an issue out of not breaking from Biden, which we've talked about multiple times. She's had plenty of opportunities to do that don't diminish Joe Biden's legacy somehow. So I just don't know what she's doing that really appeals to that. I mean, we're talking a small fragment of voters that are left out there in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania specifically that she's got to capture. And Trump's not doing anything to widen his coalition.
No, he's not.
So she's got to do something to capture those voters, and they're just not doing it.
No, not yet. And I mean, look, voting is underway. So, I mean, that was the time to do it. This is the time to do it. She's running out of time to do it. So, yeah, I agree. She's not that we've seen yet.
All right, next.
It's second down.
Tom, Donald Trump wants to talk about his day of joy. On Univision Wednesday night, he did a town hall sort of. I guess it was technically a town hall. It was a little bit. It was a little bit different than kind of your traditional town hall, though. But there was a disaffected Republican that specifically asked Trump about January 6th, and he continues this blatant, brazen lying.
Yeah,
calling it a day of joy.
What it was so remarkable is the gentleman who asked him the question notes he's a Cuban American from Jersey, I think, originally, and was a Republican, and he opens. I mean, this is it's very warm and compassionate towards Trump, towards the former president, saying, "Sir, I'm a former Republican. I want to vote for you. Please talk to me about what happened on January 6th. I'm opening the door for you, sir." In this key demographic, which could be central to, who deciding in the election. And Trump just, okay, if he understands what happened, he's lying. If he doesn't understand what happened because he was locked in the White House dining room with ketchup dripping down the wall, while the people he instigated were trying to sack the Capitol, then there's a deeper problem there. And I watched it, and it's the facial expressions. It's like, they're like, whoa, man, like, where is your head? Like, how could you see, like, it was like the Bloomberg interview, which was frankly was a disaster, where the editor-in-chief of Bloomberg, John Micklethwaite, he gives the same answer. He says, "Oh, there was a peaceful transfer of power." And Micklethwaite's like, "Well, yeah, maybe compared to Venezuela, but not for America."
Yeah, it was peaceful 2 weeks after your people tried to burn down the Capitol. I mean, nothing says love like hang Mike Pence.
Right. It's bonkers.
It's just it's disgusting. I know that we are way past the day of thinking Trump is normal, because he's definitely not. We've known that for years now, but we're talking about the things that he says now are so outside the norm and so outside the acceptability of a candidate for president of the United States. He not only does he, talk about the January 6th thing, he continues to to lie about FEMA's response to the hurricanes. He doubled down on the Haitian allegations in Springfield, Ohio, on this. Two Hispanics, two Latinos, who, it's not that much farther from the Dominican. I mean, the Dominican and Haiti touch each other, literally touch each other.
Right.
Different cultures, of course, but it is beyond bonkers.
I don't understand what's going on with him, and God knows we're seeing more of this, and that's almost more concerning.
Well, that leads us directly to our next topic. It is third down. You like that?
Run, pass, run.
I think that's from the New York Jets, but I think it's fun. All right, should we be talking about Donald Trump's health, physical and mental? And rightly so. When Joe Biden dropped out of the race in July, it was all from the initial stir that was caused after he fell on his face, figuratively. Right. Almost literally, but figuratively fell on his face in that first debate. He didn't sound like he was with it. He didn't look like he was with it, staring into the. But but as Donald Trump keeps doing events, and the event in Pennsylvania the other night where he just didn't want to talk anymore, so they stood there and swayed to the music for 35 minutes. I think it is high time that we start talking about whether Donald Trump is okay.
Okay, so I got a theory on this, and it's built on the reporting. And I wrote this over at 24 site a couple days ago, that specifically building on the dance party USA, last 39 minutes of the rally, while Kristi Noem, South Dakota governor, looks on and wonders what the hell is going on.
Trump's got his hands up. They're playing our song.
That one, based on my reporting, by talking with my sources inside the campaign, people have been around him for a while, was concerted. It was on purpose. But then you watch this rally in Georgia where his teleprompter goes out and he kind of spins off into this loop. He's like, well, we're going to 32 days, we're win, 32 days, win. Oh, the teleprompter cuts off. That's kicked off. It's kickbacks. It's kickbacks, a lot of kickbacks, 32 days, kickbacks. And I'm like, whoa. Wait a minute. Did somebody pour water on the Trump bot? Is it like, what's going on here?
But I think we also need to be talking about his physical health, right? He's 78 years old, so he is already he is now, with Biden out of the race, the oldest nominee in the history of this country. He does not eat well. He eats more Big Macs than I do, and I'm a fat boy. And doesn't exercise unless you call riding around on a golf cart exercise.
Not even getting that these days.
Yeah, and we've seen that the Secret Service isn't letting him play golf right now, and he's out on the road anyway. There is a severe, Joe Biden is in great physical health, right? Other than the broken foot from 2020 that kind of makes it look like he's shuffling around,
right?
Which made him look older than I think he actually is physically. But Joe Biden's in much better health than Donald Trump is,
right?
And we haven't had this discussion about Trump. Do we believe he's even healthy enough to make it through 4 years as president?
I wonder, and this is something I've been debating with sources. I wonder if this is landing in exactly the wrong time for Trump, because this is the closing argument time. This is the closing, days of the 24 race. People are out at the polls right now in all the critical battleground states, early voting, casting their ballots, and they're hearing about this. They're witnessing this guy in decline. Exact moment they're going
apparent decline. We don't know, but it sure looks like something's wrong.
Something's up. I mean, we can't say
we're not doctors, but it certainly doesn't look like everything's right.
Yeah, we're not doctors, but also normal people, and Trump, even before, did not spin off into La La Land, periodically. It was never like this before.
I'm just surprised no one's talking about it.
We are.
We
got
are.
this.
Next. All right. So, Tom, is it time for Democrats to panic? After the debate in September, I would have told you that all Harris has to do is get out there with some policy ideas, do the rounds, fire up her base, keep selling to the moderates and independents. She sounded like a foreign policy hawk in that debate.
Yes, she did.
Would have appealed to conservatives, or at least disaffected conservatives. It seemed like she was on the path to maybe not crushing Trump, because I just don't think the numbers were ever going to match that. But she certainly seemed on the way to winning.
Yeah.
Since then, she has completely stagnated. And as I sit here on October 17th, as we record this, I feel like Donald Trump's winning today.
I'm going to disagree. And I'll tell you why. I think the fundamentals still favor her. And also, I've been watching, we are in campaign silly season. And a longtime source point out that you've got Kamala Harris showing up on Fox News and Donald Trump going to work the fryer at a McDonald's. Okay, like we are in topsy-turvy.
Yeah, stunt season.
Right, like this is what did Obama call it? It's like back in the day, like he said everyone's getting all wee-weed up, silly season.
Did he say wee-weed?
Oh, yeah, man, that was legendary. Although I don't think it was in the middle of the campaign. It was over something else. That was great.
I've heard too much Obama in my ears.
You're like, do I need to be reminded of this?
I have to listen to this guy again.
I think the fundamentals are still there for Harris, and a couple of reasons why. Number one, I've been watching my sources, been listening with my sources, and seeing the way that the partisans talk about this stuff. Look, the thing that used to be Twitter is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Trump campaign. And I've actually seen the change on there. I get a lot of people asking me, why are you still on there? I'm like, well, I'm a politics reporter. I have to cover, one of the two major parties as part of my job. And I have seen the change on there. And that's Elon Musk, directing things on there. This rise of like pushing this disinformation around these poly markets, these gambling sites, which no real political professional takes these seriously, but trying to drive the message that the race is already over. You don't drive a message that the race is already over if you're winning. You'd push that if you're losing.
The thing is, though, Harris has had ample time to and we've talked about this, the guy who lays concrete in Racine, Wisconsin, or the grade school secretary in Pittsburgh, who are completely undecided. If you go and you look at the polling, and Josh Smithley, who's going to join us in a little bit, is a little skeptical of polling, and that's fine. I get it. But if you look at the polling, and this is as a campaign guy, I've had to rely on polls over the years. The number one issue is cost of living and the economy. And all Democrats want to do is look at the big picture, the macroeconomics, and say the fundamentals of our economy are strong. But nobody can go to the grocery store and not notice how much more it costs for eggs and milk.
Yeah, man. It reminds me.
Parents both know that. So it seems as if the Democrats are missing the point, and the Harris campaign is missing the point. There's even no understanding from her, no empathy from her when she's talking about the economy. There's no, I understand that prices are out of control, and I feel you, and we're going to try and make it better. Instead, we get, I grew up a middle-class kid.
Yeah,
and that doesn't relate. I know it's a politician trick to try to relate, to compare yourself to them, but then she goes into the tax credit for small business owners and the child tax credit, which are perfectly good ideas, but they don't address the number one issue. So then that concrete worker in Racine, Wisconsin, and that school secretary in Pittsburgh, they're reminded by the Trump people in direct mail and on TV of how much better the economy was in 2019 before COVID when Donald Trump was president. And they look at that and they say, hey, it can't be any worse than it is right now. So let's go back to Trump. That's what scares the hell out of me here.
Boy, I'll tell you, man, you know what? They, there's elements and there's, flashes of the Hillary Clinton campaign in that, I remember one of the things that Trump did so well in 2016 was grabbing the zeitgeist, the anger, and again, Democrats back then, were very new to this dealing with Trump and were like, well, this guy's crazy. No one will ever vote for him. And Clinton would say, I understand your pain. And Trump would go up there and say, I am your rage. And I see a lot of that here again with Harris. Now, I do think though, there are a couple of,
but there's not even the understanding. There's not even the empathy. Like Hillary feigned empathy because I don't know that she actually has emotions. But Harris isn't even feigning empathy. She's just saying, she's doing the old politician trick of here's how I relate to you. And here's my plan.
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't actually relate to anything.
Well, I'm of a couple minds on this. And it reflects, the universe of sourcing that I hear from on this. One is it's different than 2016 because Trump is a known quantity at this point. And the fundamentals, there was so much of a novelty vote around Trump in 2016, and which you saw recede in 2020. Now, the flip side of that is that there's the amnesia around him, kind of the cultural national amnesia around him. And man, she comes across as too processed, somebody who's lived too much in the bubble. Trump, for all his lunacy, he speaks that rage. I don't know. I don't know, but I still think the fundamentals here favor the Democrats. I mean, the good polling, not the crap polling, the stuff that's like, people drop in from out of state, but like the good polls in the states show her, up by a point or two in most of these battleground states.
All right, let's get to our data nerd, in-house data nerd, Josh Smithley.
It's time to go in the huddle.
Hey guys, we got Josh Smithley here. Josh Smithley, you can find him on the website formerly known as Twitter. It's x.com.
It's always Twitter to me.
Never. At Blocked Freak. That's BLOCKED FREQ, like blocked frequently, which maybe he is. Maybe Josh gets blocked frequently by people who don't want to hear good information. Josh Smithley, you are a data expert, and I stumbled on you looking for good intelligence about Pennsylvania and especially the vote by mail returns. And you, like, your data, the numbers you're bringing to us are great. So let's start with, how did you get into this? Because you're a normie, you're a civilian, you're not like in the middle of this political world, but your intel is incredible.
Well, that's a fantastic question, and it all started back in 2022. The midterm were happening at the time, and I was starting to become very invested in the political world, Pennsylvania in particular. And we had a Senate race going on at the time with John Fayman, who's now our senator, and from New Jersey or wherever he may be living now. And initially at the time, there was the concept of, a red wave coming, Democrats were going to lose that Senate race, they were going to be top down ballot. But by accident, I stumbled across the mail-in ballot file that the Pennsylvania Secretary of State had been posting every day. And I have been looking at more of the quality polls. I've been looking at fundraising just for fun as a hobby. And the more I looked at these things, the more I was like, something doesn't feel quite right here, because we were starting to get at the time a lot of right-wing polls like Trafalgar, Patriot polling, Rasmussen, and all that stuff. and what was being shown in the lower grade polling as opposed to the higher grade and the mail-in ballot numbers and what have you. I was like, okay, I got to say something because, again, something's not right. And that's how it really started taking off.
So Josh, obviously the vote by mail situation is apples to oranges from 2020. There's no pandemic happening, but obviously they play really telling information as to where the vote is coming from. Still with 2+ weeks to go, what's the situation with vote by mail in Pennsylvania right now?
I mentioned before, Pennsylvania vote by mail tend to be a little more complicated than most other Rust Belt states with the rules and regulations and what have you. However, it does follow a very stringent pattern. 2020 isn't really an apt comparison because of COVID. BBM was way up, and we're never going to see people voting by mail in that high of a ratio until either the legislature modified Act 77, the vote by mail process becomes a lot more user friendly or what have you. But after we got through 2020 and things started to settle down, the pattern typically, with some variation, had been about a quarter of the Pennsylvania electorate votes by mail and about 75% vote on election day. That was true in 2022, it was true in 2023, and so far it's looking like it's going to be true in 2024 as well, because the polling we do have a variety of different polls that they've asked the question, and the split tend to come down to 75-25 as well. And if you extrapolate that off the current vote by mail total we have, you're looking at turnout to be, it's probably going to change, but roughly between 6.4 to 6.5 million voters, which is more than 2016, by a little less than 2020, which is again in line with where almost everywhere else is stagnant. So off of that, you can then break things down that way.
Josh, one of the things you tweet about very often is you call it the Democratic firewall. What is that?
So, you know how in Nevada, John Walton is famous for his firewall and how he can usually dust out the winning candidate by modeling turnout and split space off of his firewall. The Pennsylvania firewall is in some ways similar, though vote by mail in Pennsylvania is highly partisan. Now, there are going to be some voters who request a ballot who are Republican that vote for the Democrat and vice versa. That's pretty typical. But what I found in analyzing the split from previous years, it tends to become close to a wash. Or in the case of exceptional candidates, where they win twice as many votes of the opposite party as they do in the reverse with the opposing candidate, it also becomes fairly easy to moderate. And on top of that, there's a third category besides Democratic ballot and Republican ballot, the indie ballot or MPA. Now they're nowhere near on the scale of Nevada, but these are also very consistent. They typically break 70 to 30 for Democrats because the type of people who register MPAs in Pennsylvania, they tend to be younger in the age 18 to 24, 20 to 30. They tend to be less conservative. Their views don't really align with a lot of the voter casting for down ballot races, so that is also fairly easy to moderate, add to the firewall, and extrapolate from there. And so when you take the firewall and you apply it to election day, both the vote by mail, you get the range of what turnout is going to be, and you get an idea of how many ballots roughly, because you can't be that precise on a decimal level, but you get a good idea of how many votes Republicans would need on election day to overcome that firewall. And it just so happened in the last 2 years that had not been possible for them because, for example, in 22 and 23, based on the Democratic firewall of these years, Republicans needed to win the election day vote by 20, 25 points. They ended up only winning it by 10. So they came up way short. And we won the rate it by 5, 7, 15 points, depending on what rate it was. So that's how it mapped though.
I have this sinking feeling, at least sneaking feeling, if not sinking, but probably sinking nonetheless, that we're going to be watching Pennsylvania results for days after November 5th, likely because of how long it's going to take to count mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, that sort of thing. Where should we be watching, especially whenever they put like the big map up on CNN? What counties, what areas? Everybody thinks, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh are the be all end all, but where in Philadelphia or where in Pennsylvania should we be looking for?
So good news on that front. The wait is not going to be as long as 2020. There are a lot left.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Yeah.
There are those of us that are afraid of protests in Harrisburg. So you just make us all feel better.
Yeah, that's definitely not going to happen. I promise you that. Like, I would just skim from heaven and tell you, vote by mail count, and it's not going to take that long. And there are a few reasons for that. One is that there's way less volume than 2020, because in 2020 we had millions and millions and millions of ballots. Like, for example, over 2 million votes for Biden were cast by mail in 2020. This year, Harris will probably be lucky to get maybe half that. About and reduced the processing time significantly, but a lot of defenders who are counting ballots when the polls open at 7 a.m. on election day, or 8, I'm sorry, the whole thing, I lose track of which day it was, but yeah, when the polls open, they'll start counting, and they'll keep counting until they're finished. On top of that, a lot of counties have doubled, triple, even quadrupled their staffing from 2020. They've also invested in better ballot counting machines that are 4 to 5 times better than what they were using in 2020. They've also developed some new internal processes to speed up that count. So unless the presidential rate is like a tenth of a point or half a point, we'll probably know the result within 24 to 48 hours top. That was Dave. So you said where to watch in Pennsylvania. A good example of that speed is Allegheny County is going to be the first big drop of the night to watch because they usually finish by the time the poll closed on election night with the vote by mail counting. And so you have the mother load of over 200,000 BBM ballots dropping from Pittsburgh, and it all comes in at 8 p.m. on poll close, and that's been the case for the last 2 to 3 years. It might take a little longer, but this year, but they expect to be able to post these results within the hour of poll closing, and then most of the other larger county with BBM ballots, they will drop in batches throughout the night every hour or so, and they're much smaller in scope. And once we get through we'll start to have a really good idea of where things land. So they're going to be wanting to watch Allegheny County first thing election night. They're going to start it off. And then some of the roles they're going to start reporting. And within we're going to look at 2 things. What did the split look like in Allegheny County upon poll closing? Because we need to know is will Harris do a little better than Biden there? If that's true, she's probably going to be fine. If she's not, we might have a problem. And it really depends on how different counties split. Because she can afford to do a little worse than Biden in Allegheny County if she makes it up elsewhere. But that puts her down for a lot longer night. On the other hand, she does about the same as Biden. She's still probably going to be okay, but it'll be a tighter rate. And that goes with the same for the rural county. They're going to follow Allegheny because really early on, we're going to find out from the surrounding one, whether she's able to hold up okay with rural white or white working class both. If she's close to 2020 level, she'll probably be fine. If not, we're going to have to look to southeastern Pennsylvania, which is where the suburbs are. They've been up trending for a while, and that will put her down for a longer night. It'll really depend on how Allegheny and the surrounding rural report first.
Josh, one of the things that there was this big debate back, way back when, in the yesteryears of June and July after the first presidential debate, when there was a lot of debate among Democrats in particular on, what happens if you swap out Biden. Obviously, he looks weak, but one of his key strengths was Scranton Joe had a lot of support in Pennsylvania, particularly among older white working class voters, union members. Have you seen that change at all with Harris? I mean, was that a valid concern, or not really?
Shockingly, it may or may not be validated in November, but the polling and the internal we do have show her holding up fine with white in Pennsylvania. It's a big reason why she's now leading in high quality polls of the state. Not say high quality because there's very big difference between that and Patriot polling or whatever you want to put out there. And to that point, that may come at the surprise to you. And I was signaling that back in June, but knowing what I know now and reviewing the play-by-play, I honestly think had Biden stayed in the way, he would have been screwed. Like, I'm pretty sure he would have lost just based on the margin that are coming in Fayette County and the type of issue he had to fix with her coalition. Because had Biden stayed in, there would have been 6 or 7 different problems when it came to turnout, minority split, could he hold the bourbon ship, could he hold in the world? Like, there was a bunch of concerning things. But then when Harris jumped in, then tended to stabilize. She's now focused in on just a few problems instead of like 10. So what she wants to do, mentioned earlier, is to really keep that rural white support up to 42, 43%, something like that. And she wants to hold on to moderate Republicans. These are the two things she's focusing on. And that's it's a lot easier to win an election when you're focusing on just 2 or 3 problems as opposed to 10.
Josh, a lot's been made about the Trump campaign's efforts, at least to peel away some African American voters, specifically young African American men and Latinos, away from Harris. Do the numbers back those efforts up at all?
Fortunately, again, more polling. Last week we had a really good Muhlenberg poll of the Pennsylvania 7th Congressional District. I bring it up because that district is very similar to how Pennsylvania voted as a whole because of its demographic, but even more critically, about a fifth of the vote in that, while a fifth of the population in that district are Latinos. And but her to be up by 3 points in the Pennsylvania 7 or 50-47 of the Muhlenberg poll third. They're headquartered there, by the way, in Allentown. And for her to have that kind of margin, she will have to do about the same with Latino to Biden, or stay very little slippage there at that. We've also had the mother polling that just her holding up in the mid-60s, the boy with Latinos in Pennsylvania. I don't see anything significantly concerning about Latino the concern, but they're not a monolith. Like, they're a lot different if we go to Texas or Florida, what have you. So yeah, Latinos are okay as far as I'm aware. When it comes to Black, we've had a lot of oversample of Philadelphia in particular because of where most of the black voters in Pennsylvania live. The New York Times, Deanna, given some people a heartburn recently, but they did some major oversamples of Philadelphia, and they found the margins in the stadium more or less very similar to 2020, which was suggest minimal slippage. Do I think Trump could peel off a little bit of the black vote? Maybe, probably a point or two, something like that. But I don't think you're going to see a significant shift on the scope that some people like to imply. You are not going to see black vote for Trump with 20% the vote. That's ridiculous. Probably not even 15. On a good night, maybe, but it's more likelier than not he's going to end up between that 11 to 13% range of the black vote.
Okay, Josh, I have a very important cultural question. This comes in from reader Alice Radley on Twitter, and she's from Good Twitter. She's been around for a while. She's a long time reader. First time tweeter question. She asked, and I've wondered this myself as I pump my chest, my arteries for cholesterol. Why are there French fries on everything? Why is Pennsylvania haute cuisine filled with fries? What is the purpose of this?
So there's a lot of stories about why that's the case. It's a big cultural thing. But the one story in particular that probably shows some insight on that. And have you ever heard of Primanti
Yes.
in Pittsburgh?
Heck
Yeah,
yeah.
Primanti, so way back then, he would make sandwiches and what have you for the truckers and the white working class workers that would come in, and they would often be occupied to have their hands full. He had a potato shipment in at one point, and he wasn't really one, but died, especially with the type of customers he had. So what he did was he got one of his sandwiches, he boiled the potato, he stuffed the bread in there, gave it to the truckers, the blue collar workers, and they loved it because it was really easy for them to work, be driving or wherever, and eat a whole meal with one hand with the French fries stuffed inside of a sandwich. And it spread like wildfire. He started making modifications to that sandwich with a like egg concoction to keep the fries sticky. And then it just started spreading, and now fries are on everywhere, which is ironic because I do enjoy French fries on pretty much everything. So
All right, Josh Smithley, he's turned into one of the best data nerds on Twitter. Find him over there at blocked FREQ. It's infrequently where you can get his stuff and learn more about what's going on in the ground in some of our hottest contested races around the country. Josh, thanks so much for the time.
thanks for having me.
It's time for the second half.
All right, so our Q&A in the second half of our show here, we've sourced from friends and followers, and Tom put out a call on the Twitter machine and all that. And the first question is simply for you, Tom, because you literally wrote the book on Mike Pence behind your head, I think.
Here it is. Piety and
Yeah,
power.
there it is. Here's Mike Pence. What's he going to do?
Oh boy, that depends a lot on the election outcome. Look, if Trump's back in, I think he sticks to teaching college courses and giving speeches around the country. He makes pretty good money doing that. And but if Trump loses, you've seen some tacking by his political team. I mean, he still has the same campaign team that ran in this primary. It did not work very well for him, but there is like that 0.1% chance that like the Republican Party normalizes after Trump if Trump gets trounced. So a lot depends on the outcome here.
Be honest. From I'm sure he hasn't talked to you directly about this because he wouldn't, and I don't think he's got the guts to say it out loud, though he should. Just how pissed off is he at how this all turned out, that there were literally people who wanted to hang him, who had a gallows at the Capitol, and now the party that he worked his entire life for has abandoned him and its principles, all for this guy who thinks Mike Pence didn't have courage because he followed the Constitution. This just, for all of the qualms and Tom and I both lived in Indiana at the same time while Pence was governor, and I had plenty of criticism of Mike Pence as my governor, but he just has to be livid at how things are working out.
You know what? Okay, so I wrote this open letter to Mike Pence asking him to talk about January 6th. I've been doing this open source research on his interactions with Trump on January 6th over at 24 Site News. I'm going to pull up the book because the book answers this. Mike Pence is one of these Russell Kirk people. Like, you got to read 1,000 words to get like 10 pieces of information. Okay. Here,
for those of you not watching video, he's off microphone grabbing his book stand. And there's his book stand.
All right, here's my book stand. I pulled off my my Rick and Morty cookbook upstairs and took that out, and I put in Mike Pence's autobiography. And I will just tell you that, like, the last 3 chapters of this thing are a big, gigantic Midwest fuck you to Donald Trump. It is a bless your heart, you are a weak man. And when I read that, I'm like, whoa, man.
That's
like,
to slap your knees and say, well, long day tomorrow.
Right? Like, dude, it's actually like, it is very clever the way that he does this. And, Trump himself, has trouble talking about this. And it's really interesting. He got a question about this on the January 6th thing, I think of the Bloomberg with the John Micklethwaite, the Chicago Economic Club. And it is so bizarre the way that he's like, oh, Mike Pence just didn't want to do the right thing. And I disagree. I'm like, this is really weird the way that Trump responds to it.
Because he expected fealty from Pence. That's all he ever wanted. That's all he ever expected.
Yeah.
All right. Next one. Is a Republican Senate a done deal? Yes.
Yes.
Is there anywhere there's still Democrat hope from keeping it? I mean, obviously West Virginia is lost.
Yeah.
Certainly it looks like Montana is lost. So if that were to happen, the Democrats need Colin Allred to win. They need Sherrod Brown to hang on. Both of those happening, much less one of those happening, seems like a tall task.
Yeah, no. I mean, well I'll tell you that Colin Allred with that just kicking the nuts of Cruz.
Oh, just an epic takedown.
Whew.
I was defending my friends, and you were hiding in a linen closet.
It's like astounding. You remember when Pence ran for governor back in 2012, and he was like the first governor in recent memory to not get 50% and still win. That's how Ted Cruz feels. Like, he feels like the 49.5% winner.
I was working a congressional race where my guy won with under 50% of the vote. So you can see why I have such white hair at this point, because of that race specifically 12 years ago. But it's certainly, I mean, what was the line? Do you remember the guy that beat Norm? Al Franken wrote a book about politics and
lying liars and the liars who tell them.
But he wrote a later one about about his time in the Senate, and he talked about how he liked Ted Cruz more than most people in the Senate like Ted Cruz, and he really hates Ted Cruz. So everybody hates Ted Cruz, but the question is, can a Democrat actually beat him? And if this were an off year, I would think maybe.
Yeah.
But boy, you have a lot of red voters, in Texas. All right. House-wise, if Republicans keep the House, will Mike Johnson stay Speaker?
I'm going to say yes. I have been impressed by his tacking and his ability to navigate the channels of Trump world. I mean, look, he got Donald Trump to talk about, hey, we should give more money to Ukraine on a loan basis, which is like remarkable. He got Trump to pat Marjorie Taylor Greene on the head and say, go home now. And I've been astounded at his ability to work behind the scenes. And I don't know. I mean, Jim Jordan, maybe, but I don't know who would take him on.
I feel like if Republicans manage to win the House, which is, I think, still a big ask, especially considering you've got California, you've got New York. Nothing's going to change in Illinois because it's already so gerrymandered. But you've got some gains for Democrats, specifically in New York. So it's going to be tough for Republicans to keep it. And even if they do, it may be even smaller than the 8 votes that they have now. I think Johnson rallies them for the vote for speaker initially, but all it takes is one thing, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's Farm Bill, whether it's a CR, whether it's passing an appropriations bill that doesn't cut $75 gazillion, whether it's the first deal he makes with a President Harris, whatever it might be, that might just be enough for the Freedom Caucus Club to want his head on a stick.
Man, the margins are so thin. He almost forgot about the insanity of 1 year ago when we did not have a speaker. We did not have a speaker of the House for weeks. It was bonkers.
Yeah, I remember talking to a freshman, almost freshman Congresswoman from Illinois, Nikki Budzinski, who's been a really good moderate stalwart in her first term, and we were talking during that stretch of not having a speaker, and she's just like, I just want to get sworn in, man. It was wild. All right, we did a lot of Pennsylvania talk today, so here's the question: Pats or Geno's?
Oh, wow, man. Geno's.
Al's number 1 Italian beef. Chicago for life. For life. Keep you Philly. Keep you Philly. All right, that's going to wrap us up. Follow us on Twitter at ground_game_pod. Follow Tom. Follow me on the Twitter machine. Send us your questions for our next show. We are working on we're working overtime up until Election Day. We'll keep you updated as we get down the road. Any final thoughts, Tom?
Yeah, guys, check us out. We might be working through Election Day depending upon how things pan out. There's a lot on the line.
Don't scare me.
Yeah, I know.
All right, we'll be back next time on The Ground Game.